Some of us don't have a life problem. We have a mind problem. Because if the enemy can control how you think, he can control how you live. You can be blessed and still feel broken, favored and still feel defeated, not because God left you, but because your mind is under attack. So today, I'm not asking God to fix my money, my situation, or even my enemies. I'm praying one thing: God, fix my mind. Your mind is where every real battle begins, long before anything shows up in your life. You may think your struggle is with people, situations, or circumstances, but the truth is the real fight is happening inside your head. Because the enemy understands something powerful. If he can influence your thoughts, he can influence your decisions. And if he controls your decisions, he can shape your destiny. That's why so many people look fine on the outside, but are falling apart on the inside. It's not always what's happening around you, it's what's happening within you. It's what's happening within you. You can have opportunities and still think you're not good enough. You can be blessed and still feel like you're lacking. You can be surrounded by love and still believe you're alone. Why? Because your mind is feeding you a narrative that doesn't match your reality. And if you keep believing the wrong story, you'll keep living the wrong life. Your life will always move in the direction of your strongest thoughts. That means if your mind is filled with fear, you'll walk in fear. If your mind is filled with doubt, you'll hesitate at every opportunity. If your mind is filled with negativity, you'll start seeing problems even where there are possibilities. The battlefield of the mind is intense because it's constant. You don't get a break from your thoughts. They're with you when you wake up, when you're working, when you're alone, and even when you're trying, when you're alone, and even when you're trying to sleep. That's why you have to be intentional about what you allow to stay there. Every thought is like a seed. If you let it sit long enough, it will take root, grow, and eventually produce something in your life. The question is, what kind of harvest are your thoughts producing? Too many people are losing battles they don't even realize they're fighting. They accept every thought as truth instead of questioning where it came from. Just because a thought enters your mind doesn't mean it belongs there. You have the authority to reject it. But if you don't, those thoughts begin to build strongholds, patterns of thinking that feel normal but are actually limiting you. And once those strongholds are in place, they start shaping your behavior, your attitude, and even your expectations. Winning in life starts with winning in your mind. Before you can see change around you, you have to experience change within you. That means learning to pause and examine what you're thinking. Are your thoughts building you up or tearing you down? Are they pushing you toward purpose or pulling you into fear? You can't afford to be passive with your thinking. A passive mind becomes a playground for negativity. But the good news is this: just as your mind can be a battlefield, it can also become a place of victory. You have the power to take control of what stays and what goes. When you start choosing truth over lies, faith over fear, and purpose over negativity, everything begins to shift. Your confidence grows, your perspective changes, and your actions start aligning with the life you were meant to live. So don't underestimate the power of your mind. It's not just part of the battle, it is the battle. And when you learn to win there, you'll start seeing victory show up in every other area of your life. Renewing your mind is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision that requires consistency. discipline, and intentional effort. Many people want change in their lives, but they are not willing to change what they consistently think about. Transformation does not happen overnight, and it does not happen accidentally. It happens when you make a conscious choice every single day to align your thinking with truth instead of lies, with purpose instead of confusion, and with faith instead of fear. Every day, your mind is being fed by something, whether it's what you watch, what you listen to, the conversations you entertain, or even the thoughts you repeatedly rehearse in your head. Everything is shaping your mindset. The problem is, if you don't intentionally choose what feeds your mind, the world will do it for you. And the world often feeds you fear, comparison, negativity, and doubt. That's why you can't afford to be careless about your mental diet. Just like your body reflects what you eat, your life reflects what you think. Renewing your mind means replacing old patterns of thinking with new ones that move you forward instead of holding you back. It means letting go of thoughts that say, "I can't," and replacing them with "I can." It means taking the mindset that says, "I'll never change," and transforming it into "I am growing every day." But this doesn't happen automatically. You have to catch those negative thoughts in the moment and make a deliberate decision to replace them. It's a process, and sometimes it's a struggle, but it's necessary if you want to see real change. The challenge is that many people are trying to live a new life with an old mindset. They want different results, but they keep thinking the same way. That's like trying to move forward while holding on to something that's pulling you back. You can't step into your future if your mind is still stuck in your past. Renewing your mind requires you to let go of past failures, past hurts, and past limitations that have defined how you see yourself. You are not who you used to be, and your thinking needs to reflect that. Consistency is the key. You can't renew your mind one day and then go back to negative thinking the next. It has to become a daily habit. Some days it will feel easy, and other days it will feel like a fight. But every time you choose the right thought over the wrong one, you are strengthening your mindset. You are building a new way of thinking that will eventually become natural to you. Another important part of renewing your mind is being patient with yourself. Change doesn't happen instantly, and you won't get it right every time. There will be moments when negative thoughts creep back in, when doubt tries to take over, and when you feel like you're not making progress. But that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you're in the process. Growth takes time, and every step you take in the right direction matters. As you continue to renew your mind daily, you will begin to notice a shift. The things that once discouraged you won't have the same power over you. The fears that once held you back will start to lose their grip. Your confidence will grow, not because everything around you has changed, but because something within you has changed. You will begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles, and hope where you once felt hopeless. Renewing your mind is one of the most powerful things you can do because it changes the way you see everything. And when you change the way you see things, you change the way you live. It's a daily commitment, but it leads to a lifetime of transformation. Not every thought that enters your mind deserves to stay there. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that just because they thought something, it must be true. But thoughts are not always facts. Some thoughts are distractions, not are distractions. Some are distortions, and some are designed to pull you away from your purpose. If you don't learn how to reject the wrong thoughts, you will eventually start believing them, and what you believe will shape how you live. Your mind is like a doorway, and every thought is knocking, asking for permission to enter. The problem is many people open the door without questioning who is on the other side. Fear comes in and you entertain it. Doubt shows up and you give it space. Insecurity whispers and you start agreeing with it. Before you know it, your mind is filled with voices that are not helping you grow, but are slowly tearing you down. That's why you have to become more selective. You cannot afford to give every thought access to your mind. Toxic thoughts are dangerous because they don't always look harmful at first. They often come disguised as logic or reality. You might think, I'm just being honest with myself, when in reality, you are being overly critical. You might say, I'm just preparing for the worst, when in fact you are feeding fear. These thoughts seem harmless, but over time they create a mindset that limits your potential. They cause you to hesitate when you should move forward, to doubt when you should believe, and to quit when you should persevere. Rejecting toxic thoughts requires awareness. You have to slow down and pay attention to what's going on in your mind. When a negative thought appears, don't just accept it, question it. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this leading me toward my purpose or away from it? If the answer is no, then you have a responsibility to reject it. Not later, not when it becomes overwhelming, but immediately. Because the longer you entertain a toxic thought, the stronger it becomes. It also requires authority. You have more control over your mind than you think. You don't have to sit there and let negative thoughts run freely. You can speak back to them. When doubt says, you're not good enough, you can respond, that's not true. When fear says you're going to fail, you can say, I will try anyway. This is not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to let those problems define your thinking. You are taking back control instead of giving your thoughts control over you. Another important aspect of rejecting toxic thoughts is understanding their source. Not every thought aligns with truth, growth, or purpose. Growth. Some thoughts are rooted in past experiences, past pain, or past failures. Others are influenced by what people have said about you or how you have been treated. If you don't deal with these sources, they will continue to produce the same negative patterns in your mind. But when you recognize where they're coming from, you can begin to break their influence. It's also important to replace what you reject. You can't just remove negative thoughts and leave an empty space because something else will fill it. When you reject fear, you must replace it with courage. When you reject doubt, you must replace it with belief. When you reject negativity, you must replace it with truth. This is how you create lasting change. It's not just about saying no to the wrong thoughts. It's about saying yes to the right ones. Over time, as you consistently reject toxic thinking, you will notice a shift in your mindset. The thoughts that once controlled you will no longer have the same power. You will become more confident, more focused, and more at peace. You won't be easily shaken by negativity because you've trained your mind to respond differently. And that's when real growth begins. Not when negative thoughts disappear completely, but when they no longer have the authority to stay. Inviting God into your thinking is one of the most powerful shifts. Oh, can make because it moves you from relying on your limited perspective to depending on His unlimited wisdom. Many people pray about their problems, their needs, and their desires, but they rarely pray about how they think. Yet your thoughts shape how you see everything yourself, your circumstances, your future, and even God. If your thinking is off, your life will feel off, no matter how much you pray for things to change around you. When you invite God into your thinking, you are asking Him not just to fix your situation, but to transform your perspective. That means you're no longer trusting your emotions alone, because emotions can be unstable. One moment you feel strong, the next moment you feel overwhelmed. One moment you feel hopeful, the next moment you feel discouraged. If your thinking is driven only by how you feel, you will constantly be up and down. But when God begins to shape your thoughts, you gain stability even in unstable situations. This kind of transformation requires humility. You have to acknowledge that your natural way of thinking is not always right. Sometimes what feels logical to you is actually limiting you. Sometimes what seems impossible to you is already within God's plan. Inviting Him into your thinking means you are willing to say, God, I don't want to just see things my way. I want to see them your way. That shift alone can change everything because it opens your mind to possibilities you would have never considered on your own. It also requires relationship. You cannot invite God into your thinking if you are not spending time with Him. Just like any relationship, communication is key. The more time you spend in prayer, reflection, and focusing on truth, the more your thoughts begin to align with His. Over time, you start to notice that your reactions change. Where you once responded with fear, you begin to respond with faith. Where you once felt defeated, you begin to feel hopeful. It's not because your circumstances have suddenly improved, but because your thinking has been reshaped. Another important part of inviting God into your thinking is learning to pause before you react. Life moves fast, and it's easy to respond based on your first emotion or instinct. But transformation happens in the pause. When something challenges you, instead of immediately reacting, take a moment and bring that situation before God. Ask for clarity, wisdom, and guidance. That simple act creates space for better thinking. It allows you to respond intentionally rather than react emotionally. You also begin to develop a deeper sense of identity. When your thinking is shaped by God, you stop defining yourself by your failures, your past, or other people's opinions. Instead, you begin to see yourself through a different lens, one that is rooted in purpose, value, and growth. This kind of thinking builds confidence, not the kind that comes from pride, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and where you are headed. Inviting God into your thinking doesn't mean you will never have negative thoughts again. Challenges will still come, and difficult moments will still test you. But the difference is you won't face them alone or unprepared. You will have a renewed perspective that P.S. you navigate those moments with strength and clarity. Your mind becomes less of a battlefield and more of a place of direction and peace. As you continue this process, your life begins to reflect the change happening inside you. Your decisions improve, your outlook becomes more positive, and your ability to handle pressure grows stronger. You begin to trust not just in what you see, but in what you believe. And that belief is rooted in a mindset that is no longer controlled by fear or doubt, but guided by a higher understanding. When you truly invite God into your thinking, you are allowing Him to lead not just your actions, but your mind. And when your mind is aligned the right way, everything else in your life starts to follow. What you focus on has the power to shape your entire reality. Your mind naturally moves in the direction of whatever holds your attention the longest. If you constantly focus on your problems, those problems will begin to feel bigger than they actually are. If you keep focusing on your fears, they will start to control your decisions. But if you shift your focus toward purpose, growth, and possibility, you begin to see life differently. The truth is, your focus is either working for you or against you. It is never neutral. Many people feel stuck, not because they lack ability, but because their focus is misplaced. They spend so much time thinking about what's going wrong that they lose sight of what could go right. They replay their failures, their disappointments, and their setbacks over and over again, reinforcing a mindset of defeat. The more you magnify what's negative, the more power you give it. And eventually, it begins to dominate your thinking, your emotions, and your actions. Taking control of your focus requires intentional discipline. Your mind will not automatically drift toward what is good for you. In fact, it often gravitates toward worry, doubt, and fear. That's why you have to guide it. You have to make a conscious decision about what deserves your attention and what doesn't. Not everything that happens to you deserves your focus. Some things are distractions designed to pull you away from your purpose. If you give them too much attention, you lose energy that could have been used for something meaningful. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to redirect your focus in difficult moments. When challenges arise, your natural response may be to dwell on the problem. You may start asking questions like, why is this happening to me? Or what if things never get better? But those questions don't move you forward. They keep you stuck. Instead, you have to train yourself to ask better questions. What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? What is still within my control? These kinds of questions shift your focus from helplessness to empowerment. Your focus also determines your emotional state. When you constantly think about what's missing in your life, you begin to feel ungrateful and dissatisfied. When you focus on what others have, you may start comparing and feeling inadequate. But when you intentionally focus on what you have, what you've overcome, and where you're going, your mindset becomes more positive and resilient. Gratitude, purpose, and hope grow where focus is directed intentionally. Discipline in your thinking means you don't allow your mind to wander aimlessly. It means you bring it back when it starts drifting in the wrong direction. This is not always easy, especially in stressful situations, but it is necessary. Every time you choose to refocus on something productive instead of something destructive, you are strengthening your mental control. Over time, this becomes a habit, and what once felt difficult begins to feel natural. Another important part of controlling your focus is recognizing that you cannot focus on everything at once. You have to prioritize. If you try to give equal attention to every worry, every opinion, and every distraction, you will feel overwhelmed. But when you narrow your focus to what truly matters, your goals, your growth, your purpose, you create clarity. And clarity leads to better decisions and more consistent progress. As you begin to take control of your focus, you will notice a shift not just in how you think, but in how you live. You will become less reactive and more intentional. You will waste less time on things that don't matter and invest more energy into things that do. Your mindset will become stronger, not because life has become easier, but because you have learned how to direct your attention in a way that supports your growth. When you control your focus, you control the direction of your life. Because where your focus goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, results will follow.